Good morning. My name is Josh Nichols. Here's a picture of me wearing a tux and wielding a sword. This is an awesome wedding, incidentally. I work at Rails Machine. Officially, I am Chief Technology Officer, but unofficially, I'm Chief Technical Pickle. Nichols, unclear. And today, I'm going to be talking about ChatOps. Now, the first thing, if you guys are curious or have curious minds, you should be thinking, WTF is that? What is ChatOps? Now, whenever I come across like a new word, usually think, okay, I'll look it up in the dictionary. Well, it's not going to be there. So let's try breaking it down into its two parts. So first is chat. Chat, okay, chatting. Now, you'd think maybe chatting like I'm chatting with you right now, like using mouth words, like these slow, inefficient, sometimes hard to form words, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones that we like, the electronic chat, like using IRC, Campfire, Jabber, any one of those things. So when I say chat, I mean internet chat. Second part is ops, short for operations, not like the doctor slicing you open kind of operation, and not like servers. Like if you know me, if you know Rails Machine, you're probably thinking I was talking about ops and servers and stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking more like day-to-day operations, like the actual act of running a business, like the things that you need to do day-to-day to make sure everything runs smoothly. Like, I don't know, if you have a product that might be supporting your customers, doing some development, doing sales. If you're a consultancy, it's like interacting with customers and working with ticketing systems and things like that. Now, for Rails Machine, that happens to be the one and the same. We're dealing with servers and applications and code and Rails and all that good stuff. So we put them together. We have ChatOps. So I guess that's using electronic chat to do day-to-day business. Not quite. That's kind of, if that was all it was, it'd be kind of boring because if you just use Campfire, you're already there, and it wouldn't be worth talking about. So there has to be some extra special sauce, something to make it interesting. And well, what if we're thinking about chat, and we're already talking about how we're doing business in chat, but what if that act of talking about it, either you had maybe a robot helper that kind of filled in the details, like gave you more context about what you're doing, or maybe it just actually did stuff. So how are we going to do that? Well, I have a saying I like to use at work, and it is this: anything is possible with enough code. So the alignment is that ChatOps is about using code to write a robot helper that sits in your chat and helps you do work day-to-day on a day-to-day basis. So what's the big deal? Well, that's why I'm here talking, and hopefully have enough time to give you some insight of what it actually looks like and why it's interesting. But before we kind of get into that, or as part of telling you that, I'd like to kind of share a story about Rails Machine and what we've done in the past and how we came to ChatOps and how we're using it today. So Rails Machine, we've been around a while. I believe we're one of the first Rails-specific hosting companies out there. Things started out very simple, like you'd have a VPS that was kind of tailored for running Rails, and we had a gem, the Rails Machine gem. It was kind of like, well, Rails had the 15-minute blog, or the blog in 15 minutes. Well, we had a deployment in 15 minutes with that, and that worked out really well. But slowly, as customers grew and their needs grew, we had to do more. They needed additional support, more hands-on kind of support. So we started offering managed hosting, what we call. So in addition to just having physical servers, we'd offer consulting to take a Rails app from development and put it into production, at deployment, at 24/7 monitoring. So if it goes down in the middle of the night, you don't worry about it, you let us worry about that. And we'll take care of getting it back online and kind of helping identify what went wrong and helping you get going again. And just lastly, there's a lot that goes on in a Rails application in development, but there's even more in production. So we offer operational consulting to make sure you're available, performant, and continue to able to grow. But we've had some dark times recently. Rails Machine has always been a small company. This is our current team right now. There's 4 of us, and we have hundreds of customers. And we've always been it's pretty small. I don't think we've been more than 10. But about a year, just a bit over a year ago, we had 4 engineers, And over the course of the fall, we had 3 engineers move on to other jobs. And the one that did not move has 2 thumbs and is giving this presentation. So it's a tough time. And I'm not like saying like it wasn't easy or like get you down too much, but we've been rebuilding slowly, and it took a lot to kind of, or one thing I really realized is that the value of employees is in the knowledge they have. Not just like how to do things like, oh, I know Rails or I know Apache and things like that. It's more like they know how the business works. And if you lose that, you can kind of pick up and make do with what you have. Like I think there are studies that show that if you have a brain injury or brain kind of form around it, and that definitely happens in companies, you have to kind of pick up and keep going. And all the while, we're trying to continue to do work for customers. We're doing support tickets, we're on call, we're doing monitoring, we're doing consulting, we're building our own tools, we're doing open source development. And there's actually a lot of things that go into making sure that can happen. And this barely fits on here, and I'm sure there's a lot of things I haven't even mentioned. But the real problem came down, there wasn't one dashboard, there wasn't one place to go and to do everything. And that kind of makes it very difficult. Like, it feels like you're almost trapped. Like if you're trying to learn how to use all these tools and how to interact things, like there's just a lot to take in. And it's like, okay, I remember I'm gonna go to this URL, search for this thing, click here, copy this into something else and do that. We kind of got around that kind of shortcoming. It's just having really awesome staff. But if those people are leaving, then it's kind of a problem. And you almost feel like you're trapped. You can't do anything about these tools, especially if you're like short-handed. And I know that personally because like that's how I felt. Like I felt trapped. Like I was depressed. Like I was on call like constantly. Every single support ticket like went through me. I was doing like long-term consulting. I was doing internal development, doing all these things. And it was affecting my personal life. I wasn't sleeping well, gaining weight. I hadn't been on a date in years, and like it was just awful. I felt trapped in carbonite. No pink stormtrooper. That's pretty dark. It's like if the Rails Machine was Star Wars trilogy, we're at the end of Empire Strikes Back. But fortunately, things are going to get better. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't, so it's going to be all right. Trust me. So, this has been going on for a few months. Like this was like early last year or early this year, and it was getting to the point where it was kind of obvious what was, that there was a problem. And our CEO Bradley Taylor kind of came in and was like, "Okay, this has to change." And I remember this morning very distinctly of waking up, checking my email, and the subject was something like the New World Order. So before I was talking about, I was basically doing everything, and this email kind of outlined, okay. It's like, Kevin, you're doing this, Ernie, you're doing that. We're not going to worry about this thing anymore. And like, it was amazing how just like a bit of a shift in perspective made things so much better. The one thing that was kind of weird about that email is like, my name wasn't mentioned anywhere. It's like, oh God, what happened? Like, do I not have a job anymore? What's going on? But turns out I just needed a break. So I was out straight for all these months, and it's starting to affect my work, making a lot of small errors. So I could just hang out, find a hammock somewhere, hang out by the beach, just try to refocus and get my life in order, get my work in order. It is hard though, like, because I kept watching people do stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm going to check the support tickets real quick. Nope, that's not my job anymore. So it's very hard, but because I needed something to do, and I think that the answer, you might guess, is ChatOps. After talking with Bradley and my friend Jesse Newland at GitHub, came on to this idea of basically using chat to do the day-to-day thing. Like we didn't have a dashboard for doing stuff, but we use Campfire like constantly. So what if we could just use that, like basically use that as a springboard to do awesome stuff? And several months before, like, actually, there you go. So before trying to actually go and start doing this, I needed like a plan, like something to do, like, or some ideas of what to do, like, and I needed some goals. So some goals I had in mind is like, first, it needs to be fun. It needs to be joyful. I need geeky joyful. My heart needs to smile constantly. And I mean that in multiple senses of like, well, this stuff has to be fun to work, like do development against. It has to be fun to use and to show and share stuff. Like, yeah, you just want to be able to work with this and have a good time doing it. And it has to be iterative. Like, workflow or the workload at Rails Machine fluctuates heavily. Like, we do a lot of consulting, so projects might come or go. We never know who's going to have a huge break, like meltdown, you take a day to work on that. So it's hard to get down to have a week worth of work on something. It traditionally did not work out. Like, I tried several times to do that one dashboard to rule them all, and it didn't really work. It just got bogged down and just never got done. So it's very important to choose something that I can do, like I can spend a few hours working on and make some, was the word profluence? Like, make steady progress towards that goal. Another aspect is I wanted it to be very documented, and not just having a text file about it, but more like its use kind of documents itself. So if you're using this ChatOps functionality, it's going to show people how to do it, because we kind of want to optimize for bringing people on board, and if they have to remember, oh, I have to remember this as stoic command, or I don't know what I'm supposed to type, that doesn't work out. So we want the act of using this to demonstrate it and have it easy for new people to pick up what's going on. So now I have a few goals in mind, and now with that, I can start doing stuff and looking at each individual thing. Does it line up with these goals or not? If it does, yes, I can do it. If it doesn't, well, maybe I shouldn't do it, or maybe I need to reconsider my goals. So several months before, GitHub had released their campfire bot, Hubot, and they had been talking about it for a while, but it's finally open sourced. So that was kind of a obvious choice for me to dig into. We actually had our own campfire bot that was written, I believe it was Fire Tower Ruby library, but as part of that joyful thing, it wasn't really a great project, and it was a pain to maintain, and I ended up having to take over maintainership. So that was no good. Interesting things are it's written in CoffeeScript, which I had not learned, so I like learning, so learning gives me joy, so that's a good thing. And it also, there's a community around it. There's people blogging about using Hubot for doing things, and there's an entire repository of scripts out there that do all sorts of things. Some of them are meaningless and silly, but awesome because of that. But there's also actual useful stuff out there. And little did I know that idea of well, I don't want to maintain the bot, the underlying library. Well, after doing the ChatOps thing long enough, I had enough bugs that I'm okay, well, I guess I get to be a maintainer now. So at this point, I want to do some, I'm not crazy enough to do live coding, but I might be crazy enough to do the live demoing of Hubot functionality. And it's kind of, I don't have enough time to go in depth of this is how you get started with the Hubot, because you need to know some Node, you need CoffeeScript, and then Hubot itself. That could be its entire talk. So let's kind of think of this as getting a very rapid glimpse into how it works. All right. So Hubot, we start out, it's a Node package. So we have a package JSON. This is Node's npm, the package manager. This is how it installs the dependencies. So we just have a number of dependencies here. We have a Hubot scripts file, and this is mentioned the Hubot scripts repository. This is basically just a JSON file that has a list of things you want to load from it. So we have bees, we have bot snacks, some corgis, and a Redis brain, among other things. Now there's Hubot at load time will basically look at a source scripts directory or a scripts directory, and these are just Coffee or JavaScript files. Now the way I kind of, I had those goals in mind already, but the way I kind of try to determine what to work on next is people would ask questions in Campfire, and I try to answer it. So let's imagine today is a work day, and just getting in, and it's a little tired, and it's I want to make some espresso, some latte, and we have an awesome espresso machine, but I don't know, is it good weather for iced latte, or do I should just do hot? So it's a silly question, but there's a site called, is it iced coffee weather? So you go there and it says yes or no based on your current thing. So we're well, it'd be kind of fun to, have this in Campfire. And they don't have an API, so there's no JavaScript or XML to kind of to grok. But it is simple. It's gonna load. Yeah. We just have like a H2 at some point. So if we can do some screen scraping, we can get at that. So we have a source scripts, nice coffee weather. So is that legible? Bigger? So way at the top, we have a number of comments, and this is just describing what it does. The interesting one is the command. So this will actually come into play a little bit later. You can actually ask Qbot to tell you all the commands that it knows. We also need some configuration, like to tell it where we are. It's not smart enough to know, like, oh, Josh is in Boulder right now, so I'm going to tell him that. We also have some external dependencies. There's this Cheerio library. I think it's playing on HTML tag soup, like a node library. I don't know. I get nerd sometimes. So, okay, we're getting the Cheerio library, and we'll say that this is a boilerplate for Qbot. Like, I don't really want to go into details, but we have this robot.respond method, and it's taking a regular expression, and then this is a callback that has a message. So what happens is every time that Qbot gets a message, it'll check it against these responds, and if it matches, it'll call this body with that message. So we can do some sanity checking up here first to see if we know where the iced coffee is, and then we build a URL based on that. And the message has this HTTP method. This is basically, there's a scope node HTTP library. You basically can daisy chain a bunch of calls to build up a request, and eventually they can add headers, or you can add a query, and eventually do a get, a post, a put, or a delete. And this is node, so this is all asynchronous. So this function here gets called once that gets back. And there might be an error, so we want to check for that. And then we'll say, my sources say that it's the result of this get iced coffee weather. And Cheerio is really, really simple, and if you know jQuery, it's awesome. So we load the body into this $, and then call the selector to get the text. So I could ask, oh, just kidding. Oh, and another important aspect of having a bot is the name, and I'm a big fan of Borderlands, so our bot is called Claptrap. So I can ask, is it iced coffee weather? And hopefully he's not dead. So in Savannah, apparently is iced coffee weather, and we have a convenient link back to it. So, all right, that's simple. All right, now that I have coffee, now we want to get down to work. And one thing that kind of comes up is, what's the deal with a certain server? Like, is it monitored? Is it how much memory does it have, and so on. So we actually have an internal app that kind of tracks this state. It's called Imperial Probe Droid. So if I need to know about the Claptrap server, I can do a search up here for it and get a nice table, so I can see that apparently it's not monitored for some reason. So I can probably change that later. But the problem with trying to look stuff up this way is okay, I have to go to IPD, I have to log in. If I'm not, I have to go to the search bar, I have to type in the thing, go to the page, and now I'm there. And it's well, wouldn't it be kind of more convenient if I could just get the data in Campfire, or at least get an easy way to get it? Excuse me, an easy way to get at that. So we started a script for that. And again, we have documentation up here. We have some requires, and then we have this boilerplate to start doing stuff with our robot. So we have a robot respond, find guests, and then some regular expressions. So here were a few things well, you can do there's two different styles of commands you want to do with Qbot. You can either be kind of literate, is it iced coffee weather? It's something you might actually ask, or you can be more kind of command oriented, you could just say find guess or just guess. And the other interesting thing is we're doing a capture group. So that means when you do that, the message now has a match object, and you can pull out its data. So once we are in there, we have a method for searching IPD and tabling the results. We actually had to write a small library to consume this API, but fortunately it's really simple, to expose this. This is a Rails app, the IPD. It's it's one of the older apps. I think it's like 4 years old or something, and I think it's like Rails 2 or something, 2.0. It's only been upgraded, not quite Rails 3, but it's very easy just to, if you have an action, you now have JSON as well. I don't think it's that interesting to go through all the details, especially, well, I guess it's worth noting that there's a library called CLI table that kind of makes it easy to do tabular data. But at some point, we're getting guests out and doing stuff with it and then building a table. So I could ask Claptrap about this guest. Nope, that's a typo. Now, one thing that I noticed as building this is like, well, that's like a name, like an internal name. Like, so our IPD defaults by searching by name, which isn't really how you usually think about like a server. You think about it like as IP address or its host name. And I don't know why he's being shy, but whatever. All right. Well, basically, I found that like I needed to make the search a little more flexible. So like if you're searching for something that looks like a domain, search by domain. If it looks like an IP, search by IP. If it's anything else, just try to do it by name. Okay. So far we have coffee and we have some servers and stuff like that. Now, let's see. We have 24/7 monitoring, so we have a PagerDuty rotation. And that means like, well, we don't have a physical pager, but someone's on call and has to deal with that stuff. So we found it useful to be able to ask who that is. So we can ask Claptrap who's on call. And it's like the same pattern before. So at this point, like I'm not going to start digging into too much just because there's a lot of small details, but we have documentation about how to use it. Interesting to note here is that we're pulling stuff off the environment. The way that you configure Hubot is by putting stuff in the environment and pulling it out. And so we ask who's on call or who is or who's, try to be a little literate there. And this works pretty well when I have internet access, I swear. But one thing we did find is like, well, if you're asking the bot who's on call, like, wouldn't it make more sense to just announce who's on call, like announce who's on call when they come on call? So we actually added like Node and CoffeeScript. It has this concept of setting intervals, and I think that's in the browser too. So we can set an interval to notify shift change like every interval, like every 5 seconds, every 60 seconds or something like that. So it'll take that and just announce whenever someone comes on call. So that way everyone in Campfire can see what's going on. Let's see, show like maybe one more. So we make heavy use of New Relic and Rails machines. It's been really useful, like when you're, if a server has an outage and you can relate it back to slow performance, you can start using that to kind of get the breakdown of, is it the database? Is it like a slow method? Whatever. And we've had customers been signing up for New Relic over the past year or so. But there's always a question like, well, does this customer have it? Yes or no? And I never remember. And you have to go into New Relic, and you have to go to our account, and then you have to go to like try to find an account, and then wait, what like these guys would call something else, and that application or something. It's just tedious and annoying. So decided to put this into Claptrap. So we can actually get a list of every account that has it, and we can also try to do a search, like to find a server, and then work our way back to what the New Relic account is. So we're doing a respond for New Relic and then something. And we have another app called Our Customers, and that's basically a CRM or glorified CRM, and it has accounts, applications, users, and we've been slowly adding more metadata, like their New Relic account. So we try to find an application from the guest, correlate it back to their account, and basically if that thing has an account or has a URL that we can figure out, then we're gonna actually, this is kind of a little bit fancy, but it's actually going to also, if it has a New Relic and it has an API token, it's going to go out, pull that data down, and spit out like the app decks and stuff like that. So again, this is another HTTP call. We're building up a request. We're doing a GET, and then we're going to check for errors. We're going to do some XML parsing and send it back. Now, if it doesn't have an API key, we're going to kind of complain about it and tell the user to try to figure something out about it. And then worst case, it's like they might not have it. So to go back to the example, I can ask, do you want like for nationbuilder.com? So here we've got the app decks, all that useful information. And we also have like a convenient link back to it, because a lot of times you're gonna have to start digging around, like look at the slow transaction, and playing around with the time frames, things like that. All right, I was gonna show one last one. It's just more like on the fun side. So we use audio like pretty extensively at the office. We have shared speakers set up. And a lot of times the question comes up, it's like, oh man, what's that song? Like some of our guys have very good taste in music. So a lot of times there's like, what is that song? I don't know. So Kevin Lawver, our president, has pretty good taste. So you can share stuff pretty easily by like if I were to ask what's on playing, he'd like respond like, oh, it's this thing. It is awesome. So he's like, oh, it's this thing. So here we're doing things a little bit slightly differently. Like before we were doing mostly response. Like if you ask the Hubot something, it'll reply back. This is using Ardio's O-embed. So it has this, I hadn't heard about O-embed before this, but basically it provides metadata about URLs. So we want to do Ardio support for this and basically paste like a title and paste like the thumbnail. So instead of a robot respond, we do robot here and then this URL pattern. Build the query, call it, and if we get something back, we send the title and the thumbnail URL. So now we have so you can see this is some wonderful chat pop, the Mr. B, the original gentleman. Very entertaining if you guys want to check that out. But so that's all. That's most of the code I wanted to get through. If anyone has any questions, like please shout out. Okay. So at this point, we were talking about Rails Machine as the original Star Wars saga, and now right now it's like we're celebrating with Ewoks. Everything is awesome. It's been going really well, and I've been enjoying working with this. So I think the main thing is to kind of take away from here is like, just have fun with what you're doing and like take it slow, like work through it iteratively. If you guys are worried about me, like since then, I've lost like 30 pounds. I have an amazing girlfriend, and I'm now CTO. So things are going pretty well. And I wouldn't say. Well, I'm not going to say that ChatOps had anything to do with it, but it probably did. So it's been a lot of fun, and that's it for me. Here's my contact info, josh@railsmachine.com, TechPickles. And if anyone's using Hubot, I definitely want to hear about it. So please track me down. So questions? Questions, anyone? I have not. I've been out of town. Sorry. The question was, have I played Borderlands 2 yet? And the answer, sadly, is no. It's waiting for me at the office when I get back on Monday. Look forward to it, though.
What did you do about making sure that the bot stayed alive? I know, like, when I set this up before, I kind of had to, like, do some magic to make sure, like, okay, if this happens, make sure the bot wakes up again, or like, make sure that it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we keep the bot alive? Like, it has a tendency to kind of go away. I've noticed that a little bit. We use God for monitoring that process, so that kind of keeps it, like the actual process alive, but there's some weird state still that, like, well, it's still literally running, but it's disconnected from Campfire. Haven't fully discovered that yet, but it's on my to-do list of like trying to track that down. Any other questions? Thank you.